London, 1792. A woman sits alone at a wooden desk, her hand trembling as she dips her pen into ink. Outside her window, the streets buzz with talk of revolution, but not the kind she's writing about. She's about to publish words that will make her a target. Words that will get her called a prostitute, a madwoman, a threat to civilization itself. Her crime? Suggesting that women are human beings. What drives someone to risk everything, reputation, safety, livelihood, just to speak a truth the world refuses to hear? And what happens when that truth is so dangerous, history itself tries to bury it? This is the story of Mary Wollstonecraft, and this is the Untold Spirit. Mary Wollstonecraft was born in 1759 into a world that didn't believe women had minds worth educating. England was entering an age of reason and enlightenment, but only for half the population. Women couldn't vote, couldn't own property if they were married, couldn't enter universities. They existed, legally and socially, as extensions of their fathers and husbands. Mary's childhood was anything but gentle. Her father was a violent drunk who squandered the family's money and beat her mother. Mary would sleep outside her mother's bedroom door, ready to throw herself between them when the shouting started. She learned early that the world was not kind to women, and that no one was coming to save them. With no inheritance and no husband, Mary had limited options. She worked as a lady's companion. She opened a school with her sisters that eventually failed. She became a governess, a job that paid poorly and offered even less respect. But Mary had something most women of her time weren't supposed to have: ambition and anger, and a mind that refused to stay quiet. By her late 20s, she'd made her way to London and talked her way into the city's radical intellectual circles. She became a writer and translator, one of the very few women making a living by her pen. She read philosophy, politics, history, all the subjects women were told would damage their delicate brains. And she started to ask a question that terrified people. Why? Why shouldn't women be educated? Why shouldn't they have rights? Why were half of all human beings treated like beautiful, empty-headed children? The world around her was changing fast. Across the Channel, in France, revolution had exploded. The old order, kings, aristocrats, the church, was being torn down. Enlightenment thinkers were declaring that all men were born free and equal, with natural rights no king could take away. But Mary noticed something. They said all men, and they meant it. In 1790, a famous politician named Edmund Burke published a book defending the French monarchy and attacking the revolution. Mary wrote a response, a fierce, brilliant takedown that got her noticed. She was in the fight now, a voice in the most important political debate of the age. But as she watched her male colleagues celebrate liberty and equality, she saw the hypocrisy. These men who spoke so passionately about freedom went home to wives who couldn't own property, daughters who couldn't be educated, sisters who had no legal identity. The revolution, it seemed, was only for half of humanity. So Mary made a choice. She would write a book that no woman had dared to write before. She would argue, using reason and philosophy, the tools of the Enlightenment itself, that women deserved the same rights and education as men, that women weren't naturally inferior, that they'd been crippled by a society that kept them ignorant and dependent, then mocked them for being ignorant and dependent. She called it a vindication of the rights of woman. Picture the risk. This wasn't a private letter or a pamphlet published anonymously. This was Mary putting her name on a full-throated demand for equality in an age when women who spoke too loudly were called unnatural, unfeminine, insane. She was arguing against centuries of tradition, against the church, against nearly every philosopher and scientist and doctor who had ever lived. She wrote it in 6 weeks, furious, focused, unstoppable. The book came out in 1792, and the reaction was immediate. Some praised it. Reformers and radicals saw it as a landmark, but the backlash was vicious. Critics called her a hyena in petticoats. They said she wanted to destroy the family, corrupt women, turn society into chaos. They attacked her morals, her appearance, her femininity. The message was clear. Women who demand equality will be destroyed. But Mary didn't stop. She traveled to France to witness the revolution firsthand, to see if the new world being born there would include women. What she found was more complicated and more dangerous than she'd imagined. In Paris, the revolution was eating itself. The early idealism had curdled into paranoia and bloodshed. The guillotine was working overtime. Mary walked streets slick with rain and rumor, where a wrong word could mean arrest, where former friends denounced each other to save their own necks. And she fell in love. His name was Gilbert Imlay, an American adventurer and businessman. Charming, unreliable, always chasing the next scheme. Mary, who had spent her life armored in intellect and principle, let herself be vulnerable. She got pregnant. Imlay promised they'd marry, build a life together, but he was a man who made promises easily and kept them rarely. Mary gave birth to a daughter, Fanny, alone and unmarried in the middle of a revolution. In her world, this was ruin. An unmarried mother was a fallen woman, a social ghost. Imlay drifted away, chasing business deals and other women. Mary followed him to London, desperate, humiliated, clinging to a love that was already dead. She tried to kill herself, twice, once with an overdose of laudanum, once by throwing herself into the Thames River on a rainy night, her skirts weighted down with water. Both times, she survived. Imagine that moment. The woman who'd written the most radical defense of women's rights in history, pulled from a river, gasping and broken. The woman who demanded that women be treated as rational beings, undone by a man who didn't love her. Her enemies loved it. They said it proved everything they'd always known. Women were too emotional, too weak, too irrational to be trusted with rights or education. Look at Mary Wollstonecraft. Look what happens when women get ideas above their station. But here's what they didn't understand. Mary's despair wasn't proof that women were weak. It was proof of what the world did to women who dared to be strong. She survived, and slowly, painfully, she rebuilt herself. She returned to writing. She found new friends, new purpose, and she fell in love again. This time with William Godwin, a philosopher and writer who respected her mind as much as her heart. They married when Mary got pregnant, a quiet ceremony that made their relationship legal and their child legitimate. For a brief moment, it seemed like Mary might get a happy ending. She was writing again, planning new books. She had a partner who saw her as an equal. She had a daughter on the way. But childbirth in the 18th century was a lottery, and Mary's luck ran out. She gave birth to a daughter, another Mary, who would grow up to write Frankenstein. But the placenta didn't come out cleanly. Infection set in. For 11 days, Mary burned with fever, while doctors tried everything they knew, which wasn't much. William sat by her bedside, helpless, watching the woman he loved slip away. Mary died on September 10th, 1797. She was 38 years old. William, grieving and wanting the world to know the woman he had loved, published a memoir of her life. He meant it as a tribute. He included everything: her affairs, her suicide attempts, her unmarried motherhood. He thought honesty would honor her. Instead, it destroyed her reputation for a century. Critics used William's memoir as proof that Mary had been exactly what they had always said: immoral, unnatural, a cautionary tale. Her books went out of print. Her name became a weapon used against other women who dared to speak up. For generations, feminists had to distance themselves from Mary Wollstonecraft, just to be taken seriously. The woman who demanded equality was buried under scandal and silence. So why was Mary Wollstonecraft's story untold for so long? Because she was inconvenient. She didn't fit the narrative that women who fight for their rights are either saints or monsters. She was brilliant and flawed, brave and broken, visionary and human. She loved the wrong man, she tried to end her life, she had children out of wedlock, and because of that, the world decided her ideas didn't matter. But here's the truth. Mary Wollstonecraft's life wasn't a cautionary tale, it was a battle cry. She lived in a world designed to crush women who thought too much, wanted too much, demanded too much, and she refused to be crushed. Even when she fell, even when she failed, even when she wanted to give up, she kept writing, kept fighting, kept insisting that women were human beings who deserved to be treated as such. Every woman who votes, who owns property, who gets an education, who speaks her mind, she's walking a path Mary helped clear. Not because Mary was perfect, but because she was brave enough to be imperfect in public, to risk everything for a truth the world wasn't ready to hear. That's the untold spirit. Not the stories of flawless heroes, but the stories of real people who fought for what was right, even when it cost them everything, even when history tried to forget them. Mary Wollstonecraft picked up a pen in a world that told her to be silent, and she changed that world forever. If stories like this move you, stories of hidden courage and forgotten voices, subscribe to The Untold Spirit. Because history isn't just about the names everyone knows. It's about the people who dared to fight for a better world, even when no one was watching, even when no one remembered.